Okay, so today you're going to be making your second model for your funny ugly monster. So you're going to start off by cutting it out. I've sped through this bit because you should all be experts at that by now. But just remember those fiddly areas like the arms and the flick of the hair to cut really carefully around them. Cut off excess paper first and then it'll be cut out. And then I want you to cut out both of your eyes. So they're circles, but if you haven't cut them quite circular, you can just trim the excess off like I have here. But you should all be good at that by now. What we're then going to do is we're going to use these new applique methods to attach the eyes. So I'm going to show you two different ways to do that. So what you want to do, as per usual with our models, is attach the back with a bit of tape. Then you're going to put it through the edge of your button. So for this one, we're going to do it as if it was a piece of fabric. So we're going to put it through the edge of the button. And then I want you to do a similar one. It's almost like a whip stitch, but in the middle. So what you're doing is you're going through the edge of your circle, back through, and then you come back on the other side. Remember, you might have to pierce the front. You go through the edge and you go over the edge of that button. So it's almost like you're attaching the two pieces of fabric or material in this case together like so. So you're just going to go round the edge and you build that up the whole way round. So you're just pulling it through and just going literally just over the edge of that button shape and all the way round, and that will make it a really obvious stitch. So this is a good one to use if you want it really obvious that you've done some hand sewing of it on. You want to make sure your stitches are nice and even and you'd go all the way round. Our second eye we'll attach in a second. So what you can do at this point, if you want to, you can secure that eye with a bit of tape. Or you could just use the same bit of fabric and move on. So what you're going to do for this one is you're going to go through the middle. So imagine it's a real button. You're going to go through the middle of that hole. Again, you tape it if you need to. If you're not using the same bit of fabric, you're going to go through that hole there. And then you would sew it round. So you use a running stitch. So you do one running stitch size, and then you go back around it several times. So by doing that, it will secure the button, and this is how you would attach a normal button. Okay, so for the second one, you go through at the front just so you've made that hole. You find that hole at the back, and then you just go through those buttons. So one running stitch, and then you just go over and over and over it. So I'll speed that up so you can see that happening. If you get caught on any of your funny monster's limbs, that's fine. And then we're going to move on to the mouth. So for the mouth, you're either going to do a row of cross stitch or running stitch. And again, you could either cut and re-sellotape, or you could just pull your thread down. It's up to you. So you all know how to do cross stitch. So if you feel confident doing cross stitch, you'd use that line as a guide just for where to put it. And you would do your first cross stitch. So remembering from the last few lessons how we do that. So I'm going to make one little cross first, just so I've got one to base the rest of my stitches off. And then what you need to do is you go back through that same hole of that first cross stitch, and you're going to then create your line of diagonal stitches. So if you remember, you go diagonally through all of these to make a nice diagonal line like so. Yours will be even more neat and even than mine because I'm rushing to show you in a demonstration, whereas you'll take your time. Okay, and then imagine I'd done that across the whole line. What I would do is I would then make my final cross coming back, and if you remember, you go back through those holes you've already made, so you don't need to make any more holes. You go back through the ones you've already made, and remember your stitches will be much more neat, much more even than my ones here. But I'm just showing you this is how you would do it, but you'd have gone all the way along that line to make a nice cross stitch mouth. Okay, so as you can see, if I'd done that the whole way along, he'd have a really cute little mouth. The second option we have is to do running stitch. Okay, so this one's slightly easier. So if you're not as confident with your cross stitch, all you're going to do, you're going to find yourself that hole. You would start from the end because you won't have cross stitch, and you do really nice even running stitch. So you go through the front, through the back of the paper, then you make your little hole again. You bring your needle through the front, and then you bring it back through the other side of the paper. Okay, poke your hole in there and bring your needle back through the front, and you'd continue that until you have a nice line that's creating your running stitch mouth. Again, yours will be really neat, really even, because you'll take your time on this. So that is what everyone needs to aim for today. They need to have 2 eyes securely sewn on and a mouth. I suggest that actually what you do is you sew your one eye on and then sew the mouth, so you've had experience of doing both, then sew your other eye on. If you get time to do all of that, there's a little extension which I'm whizzing through here, which is to sew on a patch, and you can do that using any applique method that you choose, because that is an extension task. Okay, so here I'm sewing it on with a running stitch, but you could use that more whip stitch method that I also showed you earlier. But if you get to this point, you're probably quite confident with the stitches already and know what you're doing. But everyone else needs to aim for 2 eyes and a mouth, and 1 eye and a mouth at minimum. Okay, so you'll have your eyes sewn all the way around or sewn on like buttons, cross stitch or running stitch mouth, and hopefully the majority of you will also have a patch. If you get that far, you can just add some more decorative elements, and don't forget there's a step-by-step guide here that's going to help you. Okay.